So welcome to Wednesday. We're gonna do our learning activity today. Before I start, I just wanted to mention the election last night. So, we had the yesterday was our election here, and for some people, the results are very disappointing. So I just want to let you know that there are resources for you if you are uh, having trouble processing or dealing with it. I think Megan Perry Spears sent out an email with some suggestions. I haven't seen the email, but knowing Megan, she sent out some ideas there. If you need someone to talk to, if you need, as my upper level students say, if you need an emotional support faculty member, you can stop by my office anytime. I have chocolate and ice cream in my office. So if you need to vent, need to talk, need to discuss, need just to sit somewhere, feel free to do that anytime. So I'll be around for that. But um, we still have to learn arrays here. So that still has to be something we have to do. So let's get into arrays. So Monday I was at a talk, a Women in Data and AI conference on in Twin Cities. It was really nice. We got to hear from a place like General Mills, talking about how they use data to project what breakfast cereal you're going to buy and where it should be located in the store and how which ones should be next to each other, how they should be grouped. I heard a talk from Target discussing how their inventory system, tracks how many items are on the shelf. So when you go online, you could say, "Oh, I'm going to do an order, and from Duluth Target, and there are 5 gallons of milk. I'm going to order one of them or two of them there." But then sometimes when you go there, there's no milk. So why do they have out of stock things when they don't think they do? Why is their inventory system off sometimes? And so they're actually training an AI system to predict when their inventory system is wrong and let the inventory system know ahead of time before someone else actually finds out, like a store employee predicts that. So I also had lunch with some people from Elite, which is Minnesota Power in town. They have some new jobs they're hiring for, internships, and they have some new data projects. I'm meeting with them tomorrow to see if we can organize some data projects to work with them. So I thought it was a very good conference there. So, um, so hopefully, since we didn't have class on Monday, you went through the learning material. There's a nice worksheet that kind of walks you through the basics of arrays here. If you haven't been through this, I strongly suggest you work through this there. But I'm working on the assumption that you've done that already. So I'm going to be going through and working on the learning activity. Now, this week for the discussion area, you want to post some code and some questions about code. You can do either the practice problems. They're all having to do with arrays. There are these 5, 6 different practice problems. Again, the ones further to the right are much more complicated. So I would start with the ones on the left as you're learning, unless you've done more programming before. If they're not challenging, then do the ones further to the right here. And we're going to look at these 2 learning activity ones here. The first one is a population sample one, where it says ask the user for the names and populations of 5 Pleiades, print these out in a table, and then calculate the total population of the 5 cities and the average population, print those out. So that's this challenge. So that's the first problem. I'm not going to do that in class, but you're welcome to do that. I did that in the 10:30 class and I recorded it. So I'll post the recording of that here also. I'm going to look at this problem 2 with you and look at the random number sample one. here. Roll a 6-sided die 100 times and print out each roll. Count the number of times each roll is rolled and print out these counts here. So I'm going to do that today. And again, you can do this with and without arrays. So I'm going to kind of get started without an array, and then I'm going to move into using an array with that. So I'm going to walk through this. And again, but I'm going to, so what originally I was going to break you into pairs and have you work on it, but I think we're just going to do this individually. But feel free to use your partner, use friends, call me over, ask for help. Again, this is just a learning activity. Discuss this with whoever's around. So feel free to, work on this even together if you want. It's up to you how you want to work on it. And again, you can do either problem 1 or problem 2 here, or any of the practice problems. And again, if you haven't gone through the little worksheet for the learning resources and read through the text, you can even do that today, whatever works out best for you here. But I'm going to do this one, so I'm just going to go over here and do a new project. New unit, and dice, and get started there. So one thing I suggest you do, and it's a good thing to learn in this course, is how to take a problem, break it up into parts. I can call this decomposition. And so I think what I suggest here is do a decomposition of this problem. What are the things? So go roll a 6-sided dice 100 times and print out each roll. That sounds like step 1. Count the number of times each roll was rolled. That looks like another step, and print out the results. So I can see 3 steps here. But when I look at this first step, roll a 6-sided dice 100 times and print out each roll, I don't even know how to do that maybe. So I want to simplify that. So I'm going to say, well, can I just roll a 6-sided dice once and do it? So I like to create a little list of what I'm doing here. So my step 1 is roll a 6-sided die and print out, I should just say print out the roll, not each roll. And then roll the dice 100 times and print out each roll, and then count the number of times each is rolled, and then print out these counts. So I've tried to break it into parts where I can do each part here. We actually have to teach this in our advanced programming class quite a bit even now, because when you're using AI, often AI can't solve the very complicated problems, but if you break it down into parts, and you can have AI help with the individual components often here. So again, I'm going to roll a 6-sided die. So I start a new project. There's some code here for generating random numbers. I'm going to copy that here. And I'm just added a print statement. The die was, and printed out. I'm going to run this. Looks good. The die was 3. I'm going to run it again. This time it says the die was 16. That seems like an awful lot, a big number on a 6-sided dice. There's 16. So I'm going to try to debug it a little bit here. Int die random next integer between 1 and 20. I really want this to be 1 and 6. So the code here was off. This should be a 6 here. Maybe I'll just edit it really quick. So that would work if we're doing a 20-sided die, but we want a 6-sided die. So I just want that. Eventually, we're going to try this out here. Okay. So yeah, now I want to do this 100 times to see if you can stick this in a loop and do this 100 times for this, print it out 100 times. And again, when I start, I usually don't do it 100 times. I would probably say, well, I don't want to maybe do it 100 times. Can I just do it 5 times? Or 10 times, or 4 times here. So to test it out. And then once I get that working, I'll switch that to 100. I'm just gonna go on to my next step here. So I was printing off rolling die once, and my next step is roll it 10 times. It's again, I'm thinking a loop there. I mean, I could just copy and paste this code 10 times, but what if I want to do it 100 times or 1,000 times? So I'm going to do a loop. We have while loops, for loops, do while loops, or while and do while loops. What do I want to do? And if it's a fixed number of times, like 10 times, I'm going to generally want to do that in a for loop. So I wrote my for loop up there. I'm going to stick my code inside the for loop here, clear up my indents or my tabs there. So now I'm going to say for index equals 0, index less than 10, index plus plus. And then each time through, I'm going to roll the die. So this should roll the die a bunch of times. I can check out my values, ones. I got some sixes. I have some ones, twos. This looks like it's working out pretty well here. And now it's easy to change. If I want to do this 100 times, I can just go on my loop and say, well, it's less than or equal to 100 and run this 100 times. And do this 100 times. So that's good. The next thing I want to do is count the number of times each roll. So I'm going to have some variables here. And I think I'm going to, rather than doing that, I'm going to break that up into a sub step here. And just count the number of ones rolled. How many times did one get rolled? So again, if I look through my results here, my die rolls, I can see, here a one, once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. I just want to count how many times a one was rolled here. So what I'm going to need is a variable to keep track of that. I'm going to make an integer variable. I'm going to count one. I'm going to set equal to 0 to start with. And now, after I roll the die and print it out, I'm going to check if the die is equal to 1, then I'm going to add it to that count plus plus, or count equals count equals count 1 plus 1. I can do it that way too. So if the die is a 1, I add 1 to the count here. And then when I'm all done, I can print that out. The number of ones is, and print out count 1. Now I can run this. Again, I really find helpful to run this, debug and try this out each time. So now it says this. Now I'm going to go back and do just 10 of them. So I can actually proofread and make sure this is right. So here's my 10. I'm looking through for all 1, 2, 3. I see 3 ones, and it says the number of ones is 3. So that looks right for this. And again, now I want to do that. So I've done it for the ones. I want to do it for the number of 2s and 3s and 4s. So I want to duplicate some of this code. And eventually I want to do this. I want to try to induce an array of some sort into this to try to make this a little faster. So when I was doing this before, I was rolling the die, and then I was counting how many ones. So I remember I had this count 1. If die equals 1, then count 1 equals count 1 plus 1. here. Now, if I want to do this for the number of twos, I could just duplicate this, and threes and fours and fives. So I just duplicate all this code and rechanged it. So I checked if the die is equal to a 5, and if so, add 1 to count 5. So I'm going to need 6 different counters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So again, here's my 6 counters. And then as I go through, if I get a 3, I'll add 1 to that. And if I roll a 4, I'll add 1 to that. If I roll another 3, I'll add, okay, it's 1, I'll add 1, I'll get a 2 there. If I roll a 2, I'll add it there. So again, I'm just keeping track. Every time I roll one of these numbers, I'll add it up, I'll put it in these slots here. And again, this is not using arrays yet. This is just using old-fashioned code here. But my program's getting kind of long. And again, here, when I'm printing this out, I want to print out each one here. So I'm going to print out the number of ones, the number of twos, the number of threes, the number of fours, the number of fives, the number of sixes, and run that here. And again, it should roll mine, just tell me how many ones, twos, threes, fours, and stuff. So I can, and again, I can see, yeah, I didn't get any fours there. And I got how many fives? 1, 5, 2 5s. It got that correct. But my code is getting pretty long here. And it's not very flexible. What if I wanted a 20-sided die? What if I want, one of these 20-sided die? Am I going to need 20 variables to count them? And 20 loops, 20 if-then statements, and 20 printout statements here? So again, this is where arrays are going to come in. So right now it's working, but without arrays. And I'm going to want to switch this so it works with arrays next. So we'll see how this goes. See if I'll let you work some more. Let's talk a little bit about arrays here. So like here I have these variables, count 1, count 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They're separate values. And I can't do this in a loop here. For example, I can't go down here and do this in a loop. I can't loop through and do this very well. I can't print out all these in a loop because each one is a separate variable. Now they're labeled kind of the same, count 1, count 2, but each one's separate there. What we want to do is declare an array here. So instead of this, I'm going to declare an array. Now, I don't remember how to declare an array, Tom. You say, okay. I go, well, look it up. So I'm going to go back here to my learning materials and go to the textbook. I'm just going to pick this first textbook and look. It talks about here's a normal variable, here's an array here, and it talks about declaring them and then doing new. And this is what I actually like, is this sort of stuff where it's all on one line here. So we say the type, and we do brackets, square brackets, the name of the variable equals new, and then the type is repeated, and then the number of elements in it. So I want to have an array of integers. So I'm going to say int, square brackets, and I'm going to call this counts. And say new, and again, int here, here. So this will replace, and I actually need 6 of them because I'm doing 6 different variables, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 here. So now I can get rid of these. I'm just going to mark these as commented out. So rather than having 6 variables, now I have this one variable here, but it has 6 slots in it for it. And now to use that, rather than saying count 1, I say counts, I think I changed it to plural. Counts sub 1 with square brackets. here. So that's how I reference that, is I put square brackets around it. Same here when I print it out, rather than saying count, I say counts, whatever, I name the array, and then sub one, sub two. I'm used to saying sub as the index of here. Oops. No. So then you can use the array. So again, we declare it this way and initialize it. And I almost always suggest you do it both at the same time, at least for you, what you're doing. And then we can use it and then change all your references to always, whenever we use counts, we'll say brace and then have a index in there. Okay, so see how that goes. Okay, so like one thing I often say you should be doing here is, again, make some changes and then run your program, see if it works here. So I made some changes. I have my array now called counts, and has 6 slots in it. 0 and then labeled 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There isn't a 6. There, that's better. Right. And I changed my code to reference those, and I have this printout. So it should work here, but when I run it, it gives me an error. And this is what a common error when we're working with arrays. Index out of bounds. Index 6 is out of bounds, and the length of the array is 6. Because in here, there are times where I'm working with count sub 6. And count sub 0 is okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. But because the first box, the first part of the array is count sub 0, there isn't a count sub 6 here. So 6 doesn't exist. There isn't a slot there. So I want to be going from 0 to 1 there. And it's confusing sometimes. Now, if you're in CS Principles and using the block programming language there, because of this confusion, they actually number their arrays starting at 1. But all other programming languages start the arrays, the first index is 0. So like here, I could make my array bigger. That would be one option. To do it, if I just made this array 1 bigger, I'd have a 7, and I could just ignore the 0, 1. So that would be one way of doing it. Or I could, so again, I could just make this a 7, and it would work fine now. It works fine. So that would be one option. If I want to keep it at 6, die 1, I want to actually store in slot 0 here. So I want to say count of 0 here. And die 2, I want to save into the first slot. And 3, I want to save into the second, and just everything will be 1 less along here. And again, when I print them out, I want to make sure I start by printing out the 0, do 0 first. And then do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and just not print out 6. There isn't a slot 6. So if I do that, that would also work. That should run fine. Now, once you get that working, one of the powers of arrays is that we can do things in loops. So now, can I put this in a loop rather than having things? Because again, This works fine if I have a 6-sided die, but what if I had a 20-sided die? I'd have 20 of these printout statements here, and 20 of these if then. So see if you can convert. You should almost always, in all these problems, you can do them without an array, but your job is to do them with an array and then with a loop here. And generally we use a for loop for that. So see if you can get that to work. So I'm going to interrupt a quick time again. So arrays and loops work a lot together. So again, here we're printing off the contents of this array. Count sub 0, counts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We want to do this in a loop. I want to print that out 5 times with starting at 0 and going through 5 here. And so again, I could use a while loop or a do while loop, but I'm going to use a for loop because again, there's a nice fixed amount and I need an index there. So I'm just going to do for int index equals 0, index less than 6, index plus plus, and I'm going to do this inside my loop then. I'll have to adjust it a little bit. Now rather than count sub 0, I want to say count sub index. Here, I want to put in my index. And then I can get rid of all these, or I'm just going to comment them out for now. So I can just say for index equals 0, index less than 6, index plus plus, print the number of ones is count sub index. Now, actually, I want to change this. This number changes also. So I'm going to put in the index in here too. So now when I run this, it'll tell me the number of zeros is 17, number of ones is 13. And I can test this out. Now, it's important to test this out. Now, right now I have this doing 100 numbers, and it's really hard to test. In the end, I want it to do 100 numbers, but when I'm testing, I'm going to drop this back down to 10 like I did a while back and run it. So now I can see, so it says the number of ones is 2, but I don't see any ones up here. So again, it's off a little bit because it's saying the number of zeros, there aren't any zeros. There's 1. So again, I have to catch that. Here, I was saying the number of 2s is and count sub 1. So this index, I have to make sure I have to adjust. And again, I could have changed my index so it started at 1. Otherwise, I'm going to have to add 1 to this index here, I think. And try that out. See if I can fix that. Test it out. Look at my results. Compare them. So number of ones is 3s. 1, 2, 3. That looks good. The number of 2s is 0s. There are no 2s. Number of 6s is 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That looks good. So now once I get that working, I can change it back to do it for 100 times. Now that I have it test out. Now, the last thing I'd like to do is I still have all these if-then statements. And what if I wanted to do this with a 20-sided dice? I have all these. And if only I could see some pattern here. So if the die value is 2, I say count sub 1 equals count sub 1 plus 1. If the die value is 3, I say count sub 2. So this index is always 1 less than the die in this example. So I should be able to use that. So I should be able to get rid of all these if-then statements and replace them just with 1 line if I can figure out this pattern and write the code. All those statements should be, should be able to delete them and replace them with a single line, hopefully. So see if you can figure that out. Okay, I'm going to show you one more thing that I was saying that we can replace these if-then statements here. One of the powers of arrays is how we can use index. So again, the statement I keep doing is like this statement. I'm going to take that out and put it up here. Count 1 equals count 1 plus 1. But that's if die equals something. So I can actually put the die value in here and reference it. I can say count sub die here for it. So now if the die is 2, I'm putting the die a value of 2 here. That's not quite right because I want it 1 less than that. So I can actually say count die minus 1 equals count die minus 1. And then I can get rid of all of these. I'll just comment those out for now, but I can delete them. I can comment those all out and do this. And again, we're in some shortcuts, and one is kind of nice is just to say count die minus 1 plus plus here increments that value. So I can say counts of die minus 1 plus plus to add 1 to that value. Then I don't have to repeat it. It says it's getting kind of complicated. So then all these if then statements can go away. And then this is my program. My whole program then shrinks down to this size here. I have a loop to roll the dice and I count them as I go, and I have another loop to print out the totals. And then that will roll the dice 100 times and print off the totals of each roll. The number of the count, how many 6s I got, how many 5s I got, stuff like that. So it shortens up the program quite a bit nicely. Okay, Friday, we're gonna let you do some more reviews, but we'll also get you started on the pesky tourist problem. The assignment is kind of complicated this week. We have an image of this nice statue, and we have this pesky tourist that's walking through all of our images. We're gonna use arrays to take him out of this image, get him out of here for that. And so I'll get you started on that and get you going over the code and stuff like that. So we'll get you started on Friday with that. But then you can spend time either working on that or on the review problems or anything you want for that. Okay, we'll see you on Friday. Yeah. Thank you.